All right, welcome to the second in our AFI series this summer, partnering with post-secondary educational institutions. This is the second in 4 of our AFI Virtual Coffee webinar series. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Megan Bellato. I am one of the program managers on the Savings and Financial Capability team here at CFED. In this webinar, you're going to be learning about partnering with post-secondary educational institutions, so how to build and maintain those strong partnerships to support your AFI grants. These webinars are intended to be interactive and engaging. We really want to provide the platform for grantees to connect and learn from each other. Throughout this and future webinars in this series, you'll hear from AFI grantees and their partners and have the opportunity to discuss tips, tools, and generate ideas for successfully maintaining your grant. So this webinar will be led by myself, but our guests include Rodolfo Acosta-Perez of the Community Action Agency of Southern New Mexico, Maggie Sanborn of Earn to Learn, and Brent Wilder of the Oregon Alliance of Independent Colleges and Universities. You'll hear from our speakers shortly, but first just a few housekeeping items. You have the choice of dialing in with your phone or listening to the webinar through your computer. To listen to this webinar through your computer, just connect your speakers or a headset for best sound quality and set the audio accordingly on the webinar control panel on the right side of your screen. If you are watching this live and you experience any technical difficulties, please use the menu on the right-hand side of your screen to type in a question. On your screens is a snapshot of the interface. Also use this box to enter questions for the presenters, and we will ask them intermittently throughout the presentation and at the end of the presentations. Please send an email to slandry@cfpd.org if you have any technical problems. Please keep in mind that this webinar is being recorded. We've muted all attendees to ensure sound quality, so if you have any questions or issues, please type them into the query box. We will make a recording and transcript of this presentation available on the IDA Resources website, the address is on your screens, at a later date. This webinar will last approximately 90 minutes with plenty of time for questions and answers throughout, as I mentioned earlier. Please, again, feel free to type in questions or even comments using the box at any time. So just to overview our objectives here. Participants will hear about tips and tools for developing strong partnerships with post-secondary educational institutions to support your AFI program. You'll hear from fellow AFI grantees about their partnership stories, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions, share ideas for developing partnerships with post-secondary educational institutions. In keeping with that theme, as I've mentioned, please use the box to share thoughts, comments, questions, and more throughout today's chat. All right, now we have a few questions for you. So everybody get ready to participate. Some polls are about to pop up onto your screen, and we'd love to hear what you all have to say. First question, do you currently partner with post-secondary educational institutions? All right, so yeah, this is actually a pretty interesting mix that we have on the call here. It looks like about 41% of you currently partner with post-secondary educational institutions, and about 33% of you don't, but you're hoping to establish partnerships soon. We've got 4 of you who have in the past, but you aren't currently, and then we've got 22% of you who are not currently partnering with post-secondary educational institutions and possibly are not interested in doing that in the future. So that was great. Thanks so much. All right, so the next poll question that we'd love for you all to answer are what types of partnerships with post-secondary educational institutions have been most effective in supporting the delivery of your grants? So go ahead and click the answer that most applies to you. We'll give you just a moment to do that. All right. Thanks so much for participating, everybody. So it looks like, as you can see on our screen, we've got about 10% of you say that you use those educational institutional partnerships for funding. We've got 31% of you say that your partnership supports recruitment and referrals. Only 3% say that your partner, your post-secondary educational partner, provides financial education. And it looks like almost half of you don't currently have partners, or you can't necessarily explain in what way the partnership has been most effective. Hopefully this webinar will help you sort some of that out. And then 7% of you, there's an other, whatever that might be. So that's really great feedback. Thanks so much for participating there. We've got one more question for you all. All right, and in what ways do partnerships with post-secondary educational institutions help? So, this could be what currently you find most helpful, or what you think might be helpful in the future as you start to build these relationships out or adjust the way that you have them set up. So just take a moment and answer that question, current, past, or aspirational. All right, great. Thank you so much. So looks like a lot of good answers here. 68% are saying funding, partnering with post-secondary educational institutions, support funding. Almost 80% of you said recruitment. About half of you said strengthening the effectiveness of your AFI IDA program. And again, about half of you said it helps for improved outcomes for your savers. 40% of you did say, or 39% rather, increased capacity for administration of your grant or project. As we all know on the phone, that administrative piece of this grant can be sometimes a little constraining. So it's great to see that 40% of you have seen increased capacity for that through these partnerships. All right. So thanks so much. It was really great to get kind of a vision of who's in the room and who's participating. I think that'll be really helpful for our speakers who are about to start, and kind of help them understand kind of who they're talking to and what your experience has been in the past. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Rodolfo Costa Perez of Community Action Agency of Southern New Mexico. Rodolfo, are you on the phone?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me fine?
We can hear you great. Go right ahead and just let me know when you'd like me to advance your slides.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So hello everyone. My name is Rodolfo Acosta, and I work at Community Action Agency of Southern New Mexico, and I am the Family Empowerment Director. And before I start my presentation, I just want to thank Stephanie Megan for giving me the opportunity to talk about our IDA program.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. Okay, having that said, Community Action Agency is a nonprofit that was created in 1965. We are located in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and some of the services we provide are obviously IDAs, children's savings accounts, free tax preparation, computer training, consulting to small businesses, financial education, and so on. And we serve about 17,000 people last year. Next, please. So as you can see right here, these are some of the programs that we actually offer, and every one of our programs is tied to an educational component, and IDAs are no exception. Next, please. So let me tell you a little bit about my experience working with the IDA program. I started working at CEA about 5 years ago. And to be honest, at the time, I didn't have any experience working with IDAs. Most of my experience was working for a university and the private sector, companies like Coca-Cola and General Electric. So when I started working at CEA, I was going to be a consultant. I didn't have a permanent job. I was going to be a consultant for 6 months, and I was going to do a feasibility study on IDAs. Basically, I was going to do an economic impact analysis. So I had to learn about IDAs, and I got a surprise 6 months later, before completing my assignment, that I basically got promoted, and I ended up managing the IDA program. I had written a grant, which I was lucky enough to get. And I had no idea I was going to end up managing the program that I wrote, or the grant that I wrote. So this is just an introduction of how I ended up managing the IDA program. So in our program, we require participants to save $1,000. They get a 4-to-1 match rate, and at the end of the program, they get $5,000 that they can use to go to college, start a business, or purchase a home. And as you know, we have to create strong partnerships to run a successful IDA program. So in this slide, think about this as a blueprint or as a theory of change that is going to show you the interventions and the resources that are needed to get from A to B. In this case, how can I run a successful program by partnership with educational institutions? And just as an overview, 167 participants have graduated from our program in about 9 years. That's a 74% success rate. So how can we accomplish this? Oh, can you go back, Stephanie, please, to the last slide? Okay, so how can you actually create good partnerships with educational institutions? First of all, you have to research the institutions you want to work with. You have to be familiar with the resources they have to offer. Then number two, what programs do they offer? Is their mission aligned with your mission? Do you have something in common? And then you have to build upon existing programs and make sure that these institutions are working with your target population. But remember, sometimes ideas sound too good to be true. So you have to be ready to send a message of action and optimism. How can you do this? The benefits of an IDA program might not be that obvious to some partners. So you can rely on data, but success stories are going to help bring the message home. Sometimes you can actually have former graduates present to educational institutions. That way they can learn about the program firsthand. You have to emphasize that IDAs are going to be tied to an educational component. And you can also prove that IDAs are going to fill some gaps that the scholarships cannot. And IDAs are going to translate into increased educational expenditures or tuition expenditures. And IDA savers get an understanding of positive financial behaviors, so they're going to be more successful in college. You need to get a champion with the partner you want to work with. So you have to select an ambassador, and you have to make a decision who's going to be the right person to champion an IDA program. Sometimes you have to work with the educators and the school officials, and who are going to take on the initiative to market your program. They're going to help you work with the target population you need, and then you can do the enrollment. Sometimes you can work with the early college, high school programs because they have ready-made audiences, and they're working with low-income population that you need for your IDA program. And sometimes you have to work with the accounts receivable department or the right department. That way you can expedite or streamline the cash out process. In our case, we never give a lump sum payment to the students. We have them come in every semester, and they can use their money to pay for books, tuition, or computer supplies, whatever they need. And I'm just going to give you an example how we partner with the appropriate department. As you know, sometimes the students need their books right away, as soon as the semester starts. So sometimes, I mean, depending who you're working with, you're not going to have the check ready in 1 day or 24 hours. So in my case, I learned that our local university, New Mexico State University, offers the students like a bookstore account. This way I can work with the actual bookstore. The students can charge their books to this account, and then I can cut the check later on. That way the students are not going to miss any material, and they need the books to work on a final, an essay, and so, an exam, an essay, and so on. And then remember that you have to communicate successes. This is a working process. You have to keep your partners informed of savers' progress. I mean, this looks pretty simple, how can I get from A to B? This is not going to be a linear process. We're going to make mistakes along the way of what you can actually do to work with your partners. Next, please. Okay, and as you know, IDAs are an evidence-based approach to economic development, and let me tell you why. We conducted an economic impact study in 2011 to calculate the net increase in economic activity as a result of our intervention, in this case, our IDA model. So when we talk about economic impact, think of this as a multiplier effect that is going to analyze the linkages or the relationship between economic sectors in your economy. At the time we conducted this study, 126 participants had graduated from the program. That was about a 75% success rate. So we can say that the economic impact generated by the program was created by 50 home purchases, 33 enrollments at post-secondary educational institutions, and 43 business startups or expansions. The spending by participants generated a total of 3.8 million in output, almost 2 million in value added. Can you go back, please? Thank you. And then about 1.2 million in labor income, increased wages and salaries. And we created about 34 jobs per year. So as you can see, IDAs actually work. And according to CFET, each dollar invested in IDAs is going to bring about $5 to a local economy. So next, please. Okay, so I want to talk about one of our clients. This is a success story. And what is so unique about this participant? What is so unique about Jorge Dominguez is that he got a job in Colorado. Silverstone, Colorado, which is about 8 hours from Las Cruces. And at the time I wasn't working with Jorge, but I know that he used to drive 8 hours every single week to complete the 20 hours of financial education that he had to complete. And the reason why he wanted to do this is because he wanted to get that real life experience. He didn't want to do the classes online. He wanted to come all the way to Cruces, work with his peers, and actually complete the 20 hours of financial education. So he's the living proof that low-income people are willing and able to save when they get the right incentives. And what is he doing now? I know he graduated with an engineering degree from New Mexico State University, and he wanted to give something back to the community. So he's building bridges in Nepal and Nicaragua. So he's the type of leader we want to help succeed. And that's all I have. And I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
That was really great. Thank you so much, Rodolfo. It was a really great story, and I really love that you included a success story about one of your clients. And I think your point that the individuals, no matter where they are interested in learning more about financial education and savings. And if you can meet them where they are and help them to get to that goal, I mean, that's really the whole purpose of the whole AFI program. So that's really fantastic. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. As I alluded to earlier, folks on the call, we have plenty of time later on for questions and answers to what you just heard about the Community Action Agency of Southern New Mexico and Rodolfo's story. Please feel free to type in any questions or comments that you have right now. Otherwise, there's plenty of time later, so don't feel rushed if nothing immediately comes to you. We'll just give a moment for that at the moment. All right, great. Well, thanks again, Rodolfo. I really appreciate it. So now let me introduce our next speaker, which is going to be Maggie Sanborn of Earn to Learn. Maggie, are you on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Why, we can hear you. Great. Thank you so much.
All right. My name is Maggie Sanborn. I'm the Director of Program Administration at Earn to Learn, which is an IDA program for Arizona students who are looking to pursue their secondary education in Arizona State University. So Earn to Learn was founded in 2008 by Kate Hoffman, and it was primarily focused on housing, and it was called Live the Solution at the time. In January of 2013, Live the Solution started a flagship program called Arizona Earn to Learn, which was an IDA program that was focused on college education. With the success of this program, in 2015, Live the Solution officially renamed and rebranded into Earn to Learn. So now we are still only in Arizona. We have 15 full-time staff members and a lot of part-time staff as well, helping us out with that administrative burden that we heard about in the beginning of this call. So we partner with the Arizona Board of Regents, which is the governing body of the Arizona public university system, and then all 3 state universities. So Arizona State University, Northern Arizona University, and the University of Arizona. I think one thing that has led to some of our success at these schools is we actually have an Earn to Learn office at each of the universities that consists of our team of success coaches or program coordinators. So we're in the 3 major cities in Arizona. So I was mainly here to talk about the recruitment and then our partnership with these universities. Each one handles Earn to Learn a little bit differently in every step of our partnership. The universities are the ones who apply for the AFI grants with Earn to Learn. So their grants are a little bit different. So I'll start with recruitment. They all, again, handle Earn to Learn recruitment differently, but we've been recently coming together in our 5th year now to provide the same services. So universities are really helpful with Earn to Learn in providing our literature at their university events, and then in turn giving us their information for our internal outreach and recruiting events. All 3 universities are also willing to send emails on our behalf to their entire listserv. So our little 15-person organization is being helped out by major universities and their entire statewide listserv. The administration team, both the staff and the students at the universities, receive presentations from Earn to Learn each year, and this is something that we've found very helpful. It allows both our team and the university's team to promote our program accurately, and it's definitely a fundamental piece of how a good relationship with universities, their offices, their staff, really affects the students and the efforts we're trying to make. Some of our challenges that we face, I said it before, but each university applied as their own grant. So they defined their target population or their eligible students a little bit differently. So balancing these differences can be hard with the students that we work with. They're mainly high school and community college young students, and they're not really certain on the university choice. So we really have to let them know in the beginning of their application process with Earn to Learn that that they might not be eligible at all the universities. So we really do let them know incoming freshmen are definitely eligible at all the universities, and then we have transfer students, which is just something very recent. Two of the really important offices and important relationships to build when you're talking to universities or colleges are the financial aid and the admissions teams. So building that relationship is very important. They work together at the universities, but they are separated and they handle different functions that affect our students and their enrollment at the university. So we have to maintain relationships with both offices at all 3 of our partner universities. We also receive training for our staff about the differences in financial aid and admissions throughout the state. Our regional staff at all 3 of our partners, they attend yearly training with financial aid and admissions. And then having a point person at the university is very important to our relationship. They are a specific person that we can go to or our students can go to help keep track of any questions or concerns, not just giving our students and favors a generic number or their 800 number, but having someone that really checks in with them and then follows up with Earn to Learn so we can make sure to track concerns and issues. And then notifying both offices of Earn to Learn or program changes is very important so their staff can stay up to date. So kind of that, we expect them to update us and they expect us to update them, and it's really important to just stay on track and really build that bridge between the universities, our programs, and our students. Some of the challenges that we see are the actual scholarship dollars are applied a little bit differently through financial aid offices at the universities, and then explaining that to students who are applying to multiple schools takes time and staff understanding of the process. So having high school and young community college students as our main program savers, they're all encouraged to apply to all the state schools just to make sure that they get the best package that they deserve. So the clients that we're working with aren't set at what university they'll be using their IDA scholarship for. And again, it just requires yearly training from both of these offices. You can go to the next one. One of the big changes that we've done recently at Earn to Learn is we've connected with a third office at the university, which is the Student Support Services university or office. The reason we did this was we really want our staff to be well informed on how we can refer students to existing support services that the universities have. We want them also to have follow-through and check-ins and then tracking the involvement for our students to benefit them all. The reason we went this way, we in the beginning would create internal support services, and that took a lot of time and effort. We would send our staff to training and educate ourselves, and then in turn have to educate our savers, teach them what we just learned, how to administer these services, and we couldn't grow in the way we wanted to. We have 1,000 plus active student savers in our program, and we just couldn't do that one-on-one connection with them. So we decided to develop this relationship with the Student Support Services office at each of the universities. We're still developing a system so that we can report to them and then they can report to us on which services the students have access and which students may need reminders that these services exist, and they're free to them with their tuition. So we really want them to take advantage of what the universities already have. One of the big things is tracking student issues at the universities. So we really encourage our success coaches, our program coordinators, and our program directors to really track our student issues until they are fully taken care of and the student is ensured that everything is smooth and ready to go. So we do emails and calls to the universities regularly, about every week or every other week, to just discuss case-by-case individual issues. These can be from FAFSA to actual enrollment, changing their start dates at the universities. We report out to the universities, get their information back, and then create a resource list for future students. And having that point person is really a lesson learned for us. The financial aid point person and the admissions point person to handle these situations. One of the hardest parts of connecting with the university is making sure the actual grant is tracked. We have a total of 12 grants at Earn to Learn at the 3 universities, and each of our students can stay in our program for 4 years. So just assigning them internally in our database to a role and a cohort, so whatever university they're going to, and then their start date, helps us at Earn to Learn track them, and then the universities track which grant the student is pulling from, just so we can stay consistent on how much money is left at the universities, how many more spots there are for students, so we can do proper outreach and recruiting. And then we always confirm with the students prior to their start date. We don't want to have them, their money going to one school and their actual enrollment at another. So we do confirm with all students, even though we have 1,000 of them. And then this is just a wider process to the universities. This is just another way we track the actual IDA scholarship that's going to the universities. It happens twice a year. Our staff preps our students, our financial institution partners, and our universities. So there's tracking on all ways. It's an administrative piece that really weighs down on our staff, but it's the most important one to get the students the money that they have been saving, get their match, and then apply it to the right university. So the key takeaways for us in our 5th year, where training and updates are important at offices at the universities and colleges, training on your program or our program, and training on their school. So just being able to connect with the universities and having them be able to connect with us. And then the best offices that we have connections and relationships with are the admissions, financial aid, and now the student support services. So those definitely are the 3 areas that we are focusing on, and keeping that relationship and those one-on-one partnerships really, really strong. And I think that's it.
Wow, that was really great. Thank you so much, Maggie. I love the way you spelled out sort of, everything that you've done, but also some of the challenges that you've encountered and the lessons that you've learned from that. It seems like tracking and establishing tracking systems has been sort of a key, and those relationships, as Rodolfo even mentioned before, has been really a key part of the success of what you've done. And what I also love about that is it sounds like you guys have really sort of embraced the trial and error, kind of elements of this, which is, hard, but I think you've seen a lot of success from it. So that's really great. We have a couple questions specifically. So one of the questions is, do the schools apply for the grant but Earn to Learn works the grant? So like, is the grant coming through Earn to Learn, or is it coming through the school? Can you talk, or the Board of Regents, or can you talk more explicitly about that?
Yes, it is coming from the schools, and then Earn to Learn administers the grant. So the Arizona Board of Regents, that governing body, they worked with all 3 universities, and then Earn to Learn on top of that to apply for the grant. And then it was Earn to Learn's responsibility to find the staff power in our program to administer, find the students, set everybody up for the actual disbursement of the funds. So we technically, I guess, are under the university.
Okay, that's helpful, and hopefully that was helpful to the person who asked that question. Another question, you mentioned, Maggie, that you one of the important sort of pieces that you guys put into place is establishing that point person at the different departments. Is there a specific department with which you should establish a point person, or should you have one at each one? And can you talk a little more in more detail about that and what that looks like?
Yes. So it's a little bit different at each of the universities. I'll just give one example. At the University of Arizona, there are the person who's in charge of our scholarship or our grant there works for both financial aid and admissions. She oversees both offices. But then under her, there are people that we are always supposed to contact with her attached. So the point person came to us with our grant, which is nice, but we've also established other sub kind of relationships in specific offices. That is just something, I mean, we always need one person to go to, one email address to have to ask questions. It changes sometimes just with like turnover at the universities or people moving different jobs, but we've always been assigned to one person per office.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. Thanks, Maggie. All right, we've got a lot of more sort of general questions coming in, so I think now we'll turn it over to our next speaker, and that's going to be Brent Wilder with the Oregon Alliance of Independent Colleges and Universities. Brent, do we have you on the line?
I am here. Thank you so much, Megan.
Excellent, fantastic. I'll let you take it away. Just let me know as you need me to change slides.
Well, I just want to say that I have thoroughly enjoyed the two previous presentations, and I'll tell you what I'm going to try to do is maybe kind of shape my comments and kind of based on what information has been presented, and really kind of maybe focus on how we established our program here, in addition to what, really what's going to be helpful in really establishing those key relationships with post-secondary institutions. So why don't you go ahead and bring up the next slide, and we will go ahead and proceed. But just a little bit of background about our program here in Oregon. There's a lot of similarities with the two previous programs, especially with Earn to Learn. We've had lots of conversations with Kate. But in Oregon, here we are an organization that works with 18 private nonprofit institutions here in Oregon. And back in 2007, there was a research grant that was being conducted here nationally, and they facilitated an introduction with an AFI grantee here in Oregon, and ourselves and CASA of Oregon were looking to develop creative solutions to helping low-income individuals acquire an asset. We felt education was a real key component of that, and really helped facilitate an introduction to CASA back in 2007. And it was, I appreciate the comments about us trying to find mission alignment, and that is so critically important, because our presidents at the time had reached out to our organization and said, really, can you help us increase access of low-income individuals to our campuses? And so that was really a point of emphasis for us, and it really aligned naturally with CASA and their interest to grow their education IDA program. And so back in 2007, we modeled the other existing relationships for AFI grants and established we call the Match College Savings Program. And really we were intentional to kind of build the program from the ground up. And so what we did is we established a formal partnership with CASA. CASA is the one that is getting the AFI grant. And so we started developing a series of informational meetings with our financial aid directors at the time 10 campuses, and what we found out is that largely, much like our organization, we were not that familiar. I had never heard of an education IDA. I wasn't really familiar with IDAs in general, because again, my background is within higher education, and we found the same to be true with our financial aid partners. They were very accustomed to funding from the Department of Ed. They were not familiar with IDAs, didn't really know how it would impact financial aid. So we really started from the ground level and kind of building an educational awareness of the uses of IDAs, how they can be used within post-secondary education. And we were very intentional, but we took about 2 years to kind of just really develop what would be the appropriate match rate, what would be the appropriate level that we should target. Early on at the time, back in about 2007-8, the average debt load at that time was approximately $25,000, and so we felt like if we could develop a program that would be that would really kind of fill that gap by about 50%, that we felt that would be good. And so we developed a program that has a 5-to-1 match, and we will match up to $1,800 of student savings with an additional $8,000 in match. And in Oregon, we're unique. Oregon has a state tax credit that can help supply the non-federal match. But it also enabled our organization to go out and fundraise an additional dollars to help support that student match. So of the $8,000 in match, $2,000 comes from AFI, $3,000 comes from the Oregon IDA program, and then $3,000 comes from money that we're able to leverage and match and raise from the corporate community here in Oregon. So it's we started it, we launched it. Back our first withdrawals were back in 2010. We don't have 1,000 savers like Arizona's Earn to Learn program, but we've had over 265 students go through the program, and we've conducted a survey, evaluation of the program, and the results have been phenomenal. It's just been, but it has taken us quite some time to kind of build and develop the relationships with our campuses. Much like what Maggie said, financial aid and admissions and student support services for us are critical partners in this endeavor. And I think the thing that's unique about our program is that we took an AFI grantee in CASA of Oregon who was interested in developing education IDAs, and they partnered with an organization that had some pretty deep relationships with at least the private institutions here in Oregon. So, when you're looking at trying to develop and start those relationships with post-secondary institutions, I would really encourage you to kind of look for organizations like ours who have existing relationships with institutions. We meet with our financial aid and admissions folks on a regular basis. We were doing some existing work to do outreach with community-based organizations to really develop increased access to our institutions, and so there was really some strong alignment there. And I think in looking back at our program, and again visiting with the folks from CASA, they said the ability to partner with a nonprofit like us has been critical because we were able to open doors that otherwise would have been more of a challenge to try to navigate. And so we really missionally had a strong relationship. And so Megan, I apologize. I'm diverting off a lot of my slide presentation, but I'm trying to adapt it to more of what we've heard already. But I think the one thing that really what we've been able to do, and I think in our conversations with our campuses, the last bullet that you're seeing right now, we're trying to leverage more scholarship and student aid dollars. Right now, 92% of our students on our campuses receive some form of financial aid, but that still leaves a gap. And so the no benefits reduction clause is really a key piece there, is that students are able to maximize their aid from their campuses, and the IDA program is ideal because it allows students to have some skin in the game and to really address that gap that otherwise would be very, very difficult. And I think the other thing that we're also doing with our campuses is really, it's more than the money. What we're finding is that we talk, our language with our campuses is a little bit different. We talk about the earning of a degree as the acquisition of an asset, and what our evaluation proved to be is that the support services that are required of the IDA program, the financial literacy, the professional development piece, the career planning pieces, all existing pieces that already take place on a campus, but we're just documenting it for the purposes of the IDA program, are equally as important to just the academic preparation and that students are receiving. And so what we have found is that those have been well received, equally as important. Those are things that are just added benefits to an education IDA program. But again, I think just to echo some of the things that were said earlier, the relationships with the campuses are key. We're fortunate that our board of directors includes our college and university presidents, and so having that buy-in at the top down has been really critical. Some of our campuses where we've seen more participation than others, some of that internal champion has come at the presidential level, and that's been really a very key part to the success of our program and the continued growth of it. And again, I think if you have the ability to get the champion at that level, it makes a pretty significant difference. I think that without you know, again, I think I've talked significantly about it, but again, I think I would really encourage a lot of you to again try to find organizations where you have mission alignment that really could be a great partner. Nonprofit organizations that work with, or other system organizations like in Arizona, could be a really a key partner in developing an educational idea program that could be very successful.
That was great, Brent. Thank you so much, and I really completely appreciate your willingness and interest in being flexible based on kind of what you heard from some of the other speakers. So that's fantastic. No problem at all.
Sure.
Yeah, and so, you know, obviously to those that are on the call, we'll share these slides, as I mentioned earlier, but I'm sure that, you know, we'll have an opportunity over the next half hour or so to continue to ask questions. So if you have more specific questions around some of the information that any of the speakers, but particularly Brent, since his slides are slightly off from his talking points, which is totally fine, we can follow up or ask questions now and later. So one specific question that did come in, Brent, could you break the match down just again real quick? It's 2,000, 3,000, and 3,000?
Correct. And so again, we've structured it a little bit differently. I mean, what we're seeing is that most of our savers are starting in their second year of school. And so our campuses, our financial aid directors are the key point people in enrolling students. We've got 36 months for those students to spend the money, that approximately $10,000 in resources down. And so the source of that match is 2,000 is AFI, 3,000 comes from Oregon's got a sales tax credits to fund an IDA, the non-federal IDA's program in Oregon. So $3,000 comes from that, and then $3,000 comes from our organization that we're able to raise primarily from the corporate community as an additional match to get to the 8,000.
Great, that's really helpful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, and so with that, if there are no other specific questions for specific speakers, I think right now we're going to move on to sort of general questions. So, you know, these are open. I would ask, you know, any of our speakers to kind of jump in and feel free to answer specifically kind of to answer the question from your perspective, or if you have additional comments. And there may be an opportunity for us to ask folks on the phone and unmute you if you have a particularly compelling answer or story to share, you know, and to augment kind of any of our presenters' answers. So I guess where we'll start is, and this is a question that we get all the time at CFED and working with AFI grantees, but for the speakers first, do you have a specific database that you use to track your grants? We'll just go in order of who's presented here. So Rodolfo?
Yeah, and that's a pretty good question. And I forgot to mention that we have been offering IDAs as a sub-grantee of the New Mexico Assets Consortium, which is formed by 22 community-based organizations and about 20 financial institutions. But about 5 years ago, that's when we decided to apply for our own AFI grant. We continue to work with the consortium, but we decided to apply for our own grant. So that was the challenge, where we had to come up with our own data reporting system. And through the New Mexico Consortium, we used AFI. Then with my new grant, I kind of created my own little macro in Excel. We started with 22 high school students, and then we used to use ETO. Honestly, I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but I mean, for the most part, efforts to outcome. Yeah, thank you. And so pretty much I created my own tool in Excel, and let me tell you why. Because as you know, I'm pretty big on quantifying the economic impact of our program. So I created a database that is going to help me gather the economic data that I need to send the message of action to stakeholders.
That makes absolute sense. Thank you. And I appreciate you underscoring kind of the importance of being able to communicate the economic impact of this work. I think, you know, for any kind of relationship, your post-secondary educational partners, your funders, the community even that you work with, being able to communicate the impact in that way is always critical. So that's great. Maggie, is there something, a specific type of database or tracking system that you all use at Earn to Learn or with the Board of Regents in the schools?
Yes, we use Outcome Tracker, just to share Outcome Tracker as our database.
Ah, okay, fantastic, fantastic. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Outcome Tracker. And Brent, what is the tracking system that you all use, or database that you all use to track your programs and your grants?
Yeah, we well, that's the CASA of Oregon does that for us. So we use an Excel spreadsheet in our office to kind of track it as well. But CASA uses Outcome Tracker as well.
Ah, fantastic. And so that actually leads me to a slight follow-up question. And Brent, I know that you're a little more outside of these sort of nuts and bolts pieces, but I wonder, and this, any of you could answer this. When you're sharing information with another partner who's using a different tracking system, sorry, yeah, thank you. Do you find it, has there been a particular system that you found that works well? Is it just sort of sending over Excel documents as you have them? Do you use sort of a Google shared document? Has anybody come up with an interesting method for sharing data when you're working with a partner who uses a different tracking system than your organization?
Yes. For Earn to Learn, our financial institution partners, so the banks where our IDAs are housed, actually created systems so it does communicate well with Outcome Tracker. So like all the student deposits and stuff automatically input into our database. But then for the universities, they request us to use just like downloaded Excel spreadsheets, so anything we export from our database. And then to send it to them, we like to be secure and keep our student information safe. So we use either an internal system that they have, like similar to something like Dropbox, so password protected sheets and everything, or we use our Earn to Learn Dropbox and give them access to that. But just basically a protected Excel sheet is how we share it back to our universities.
Perfect. That's really helpful. That's really helpful. Thank you. Okay, so we've got, as I'm sure you all can imagine, we've got quite a few questions around that funding match. So I'm going to run through some of these, and some of them I'm going to try and, a lot of them are very similar, so I'm going to try and not repeat myself here. But we've just got a lot of questions around, in any of your cases, do the colleges or universities provide the non-federal match? And if they don't, can you talk a little bit more about where you've had success, getting that money and the process for working with universities on that? So I'll just start right there, and then we'll continue to move forward with some of the other questions.
Well, this is Brent. I'll go ahead and start because we're kind of evolving into a different model that looks very much like what Earn to Learn is doing. But historically, we have not, our institutions have not been a funder in the program. Again, it's been the source of the funding has either been again savings, AFI, the Oregon IDA program, and our organization. We are evolving into a program model that looks very similar to Earn to Learn, and for the first time we're now asking our institutions to take some of their scholarship money to be the non-federal match. What we found out to be that in order to really kind of meet the demand, because we have we asked our campuses who kind of met the income requirements. And the number was, I think, surprising to many of our institutions. I think in the aggregate, it was a very significant number. And so we're asking them to be partners with us. And that's a transition, and that's been met with there's been some varied success. But we have 3 institutions that are willing to step up and be a partner in that way because they've seen the success of the program to date. So we're evolving into where the institutions are going to be more of a financial partner in our program.
That's great, Brent. Thank you. Maggie or Rodolfo, do you have any other comments around whether the, do any of the colleges or universities you've worked with provide that non-federal match, and if not, how does that sort of work in terms of bringing the money over, and do you have experiences or lessons that you'd like to share around that?
Yes, at Earthlearn, our 3 partner universities provide the match, the non-federal match. So for each student, they provide $2,000 of the match dollars. So our students save $500 each year. It's an 8-to-1 match that we have, and the universities provide $2,000 each year, and then the AFI is the other $2,000.
Great, great. Just a quick follow-up question there. When you're, and this could, any of you could answer, but I think it's sort of a piggybacks very close after what you just said, Maggie. When you're first sort of entering the relationship, if you will, with these post-secondary institutions, and you're looking for that non-federal match, can any of you speak to sort of what are some of the most compelling ways that you can get their attention and ask for that non-federal? If you're hoping that they're going to be the ones to provide that, is it an initial letter of interest? Do you try to meet? I know that Brent mentioned that getting some buy-in from the top is always really helpful at the beginning. So what does that look like? And can you talk a little bit about how to make those initial introductory conversations most compelling to sort of secure that money?
This is Rodolfo, and if you allow me to do so, I just want to go back to the other question about getting the fund from the educational institutions. Sure. Honestly, we have never secured any funding from the educational institutions. They actually are more than happy to provide in-kind assistance in the form of technical assistance, asset-specific training, access to their facilities, labs, and so on. But I'm actually working with them, with New Mexico State University, with their business incubation. We're trying to get them to match some of our IDAs so that their incubator clients can actually go through the program. That's kind of my elevator pitch, like they're going to get the asset-specific training that they need, and then they're going to get about $5,000 so that they can actually launch their business idea. That's my whole elevator pitch right now. And we have been really successful in getting money from financial institutions. If you want to learn more about this topic, I'm going to be presenting at the Community Action Partnership Conference in Austin in August. And I'm going to be talking about how community-based organizations and financial institutions can work together to benefit one another. Under the Community Reinvestment Act, financial institutions are going to improve their rating, their lending, and their lending ratings if they invest in low-income communities or an IDA program. So in the end, it's a win-win situation for the bank because their ratings are going to improve, and then our savers are going to deposit their savings into their financial institution, and then once they complete the program, a lot of people actually purchase a home or a car or decide to go back to school, get a master's. So it's kind of what I call the invisible hand. They're going to benefit themselves from investing in the IDA program, but the community is also going to benefit from the investment.
Hey, Megan, this is Brent. We try to use as much data as possible. I think we've had the benefit of our institutions not putting in any resources into the program in our first 7 or 8 years, and so we've had success through our evaluation. But what we've actually done is go back to the institutions. We've asked our financial aid directors, how many students do you have currently enrolled that are 200% below the poverty level at your institution? And so we've been able to get that number, and then we go back to whether it's the president, the CFO, financial aid director, and have said, we've asked this question to your institution. And for example, if you've got one institution that's got let's say 2,500 students, and they have 400 students that would be that would meet the income eligibility requirements, it begins to be a little bit more compelling because they've seen the success of the program, they've seen how it's been able to retain students, they've been able to not only graduate through the IDA program, but graduate from the institution and be successful. And in many cases, they didn't really even realize that they had that many students that would qualify or be eligible to participate. And so that's been I think a pretty key data point to share with them to kind of begin to have them look at it and consider being an investor in the program.
That's really great. These are good points. These are really good points. So I'm wondering, I think, I'm sorry, I'm just looking through some of these questions here. So a general question would be, we're gonna move off of the funding piece for just a minute, and go into kind of the question of touch points. So, you know, this kind of alludes back to the very beginning. We talked a little bit about capacity, administrative capacity. One of our audience participants is wondering how high touch you consider your IDAs. And I think this is particularly pertinent when you're working with post-secondary educational institutions and working with students of all ages. Do you send monthly statements, speak to clients? And particularly with respect to sort of scaling your IDAs, you know, at some point your capacity becomes constrained even if you started out as a very high touch and you get larger and try to reach a more broad population and have a greater impact. In some cases, those client touches have to go down, and in some cases maybe not. I wonder if you all could speak to any of that, you know, related to sort of your success rates, the number of participants you have getting to, you know, to asset purchase, graduating from their programs, those types of things. Can anybody speak a little more to that?
This is Brent. I'll talk to. I mean, the key touch point on our campus has been financial aid, and so the financial aid offices, you know, that's been some of their feedback, is that it, compared to what they do for, you know, the other aspects of their job, this is pretty labor intensive. I mean, the amount of time and required to sit down and document and submit the application and do the paperwork has been, you know, it's been difficult for them. You know, a couple of our key financial aid people have said, you know, I'd rather spend this time doing this because I know that students are going to really benefit. It's a better time spent than trying to find scholarship opportunities, for example, for students. But that's been probably our biggest challenge with our financial aid. I mean, some of them embrace it, but those who do well say it's a challenge. Now that we've seen the program grow, what we're looking at doing is using some of the administrative resources with the AFI grant to alleviate that burden from our campuses and centrally manage that and have more of a central administration in our partnership with CASA, take more of the enrollment and higher touch points with students and really take that off the plate of our financial aid directors, because that's a difficult part, but that's a very good question. So we're hopeful that that'll help enable it to scale and grow successfully.
I would actually agree with Brent, and it is an administrative burden on the universities as well. I think something we've learned in the past few years is that timing is really important for our grant and our universities. So we send over like our potential new students that are joining the program in January, and the students aren't even going to go to the school until August. So we give the universities plenty of time to do a few back and forths with us to let us know that the students are not actually enrolled or not doing their FAFSA, or maybe even haven't applied. So they'll go through our list, they'll add notes, they'll send it back to us, and that's like probably every month until August. So we start way earlier than you would think we would, but we just want to give the university time to send us lists and then just go do back and forth with Earn to Learn universities and the students to get everyone situated. We didn't do that in the beginning, and we lost a lot of students just because we weren't checking in as much and the universities weren't checking in as much. So in the beginning, it was definitely a lesson learned to start a little bit earlier and just stay on track, on top of the students, especially with the lower income bracket that we're serving. We are serving as just another person that is trying to help them out and being their support to get through this process, because a lot of our students are first generation, and even if they have the support at home, they don't always have the knowledge of the steps that they need to take. So just being able to serve them in that way, take the time and really work with the universities and our students.
Those are great answers. Thank you so much. And just for all of you as presenters and for the audience, our next and I'll dive into this a little bit later, but our next webinar in the series, which is going to be on in August, that first week of August, it's going to be on program development, and we will be talking a little bit about how you can different sort of methods or opportunities that folks have found in order to continue to keep the folks that they have enrolled in their programs engaged and successful, and we'll talk through strategies about how to do that and provide the support that you want to provide to your savers without just completely exhausting your program staff with that administrative burden. So let's take some of these lessons and bring it over to there as well. I think that really sort of feeds nicely into our next discussion in the series. I have a few very specific questions now that have come through, and I want to kind of roll back to there if you're comfortable with that. Specifically for Rodolfo, how do you track your job outcome when you talk about sort of the entrepreneurial piece and businesses? Is it through small business ownership at an IDA, or is it more through the post-secondary IDA program? How are you tracking those like longer-term outcomes?
Well, it depends. When I did the economic impact study, I had to call myself 126 people to ask them about their experience in the program. I'll be more than happy to share the list of questions that I used. I don't remember all of them, but most of them were like, are you still saving on a monthly basis? Do you still own your business? Have you defaulted on your home? And so on. And just to give you an example, I'm happy to say that 100% of our clients who purchase a home through the IDA program have not defaulted on their mortgage. 93.4% of the business owners, their businesses are still up and running. Most of our students actually went on to complete their degree, and they decided to go for a master's. And some of them, we try to encourage our savers by nominating them for a national award or some kind. Like one of them actually was highlighted as a success story by Senator Heinrich from New Mexico when he introduced the two-generation approach to economic development. Another one, Jorge, he's the one who was building bridges in Nepal, Nicaragua, and he was building houses for low-income people in Mexico and the U.S. So we always try to send that message. Sometimes we use data, sometimes we use success stories, but in the end, as an economist, I'm always keeping track of data because I want to know what people are doing with the IDA that they received. It's hard.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's hard, it's time-consuming, but in the end, I want to go beyond data. Sometimes we have data, and then it can translate into information or knowledge, and that's what I want to provide to my funders and some other clients. I want to provide that knowledge that is going to help. It's going to help me build my case for IDAs.
That is fantastic, and yes, I think it would be really great, Rodolfo, if you can share those questions that you used with us. We can make sure that they're made available when we send them out with the slides and the transcript from this webinar later. That would be really, really helpful. Yeah. And then just very quickly, one final follow-up question for you, Rodolfo, here, specifically for your program. You mentioned a calculation that suggests that for every dollar that's invested, $5 goes into the economy of your local community. Can you talk a little bit or just sort of quickly explain how you came up with that equation, or how other folks can do that to make the case, as you say, for IDAs?
Okay, well, actually, that number, that multiplier, the 1 to 5, that one I got it from the CFED website. According to CFED, each dollar that you invest in IDAs is going to translate into $5 in the local economy due to increased educational expenditures, increased home mortgages, or increased business ownership. Because if you think about it, I mean, people are going to be investing in their education, and then their earning potential is going to go up, so there's going to be more disposable income in the economy to be spent. People are going to be buying more houses or cars, I mean, you name it. And so how's that? That's how CFED got that number. But I'll be more than happy to send you my report. I mean, it's pretty lengthy, about 145 pages. Or I can just send you the summary of our economic impact and how we just implant, a software to measure the multiplier effect as a result of our intervention. I mean, it's really hard to explain in 5 minutes.
Totally. Yeah, I understand. No, I think if you want to share that summary, that would be really, really great. I think the folks on the call would love to hear more about how to explain the economic impact. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Actually, that's a public report, and I'll be happy to send it. And just so you know, the way we calculated the economic impact, you have to be really careful choosing the sectors of the economy you're working with. When you're working, with, if you want to measure the impact of educational IDAs, then you have to look at every single purchase that your savers made through the IDA program. Was it books, tuition, and so on and so on. So you're gonna select the economic sectors you want to measure. That's how you get the multiplier effect.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think that's really critical. So moving, I think, on to a couple specific question we have for Maggie with Earn to Learn. Kind of going back to the funding piece, everybody's driver here, always. If the grants are with the universities, and if you can speak to it, where are the funds coming from to support the Earn to Learn staff? Are these sort of outside grants, outside money that you're finding? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it is outside money, as well as a portion of the universities provide an administrative fee for us to administer the grants for them. So the universities do provide a small amount of money per per group of enrollments that we have of students. The universities bounce back a few dollars, but mostly that's what our development efforts have to go towards, is finding money for our staff through grants and other donations.
That's great. Thank you. And I love that idea of an administrative fee. I wonder,
yes,
has anybody else experienced that? I haven't heard much of that around the country. Is anyone else kind of?
I think it's because we administer the grant for them.
Right.
And I'm not sure, they apply to the grant. It's not us applying to it. So I think that's one of the reasons for that.
That's great. That is an very unique way of kind of offsetting your capacity. So that's awesome. I love to see that.
And for our organization, that's why the partnership with the AFI grantee and CASA works really well. I mean, we're an organization that already exists on behalf of our institutions, and the institutions fund our organization. So we're just taking the assets of two organizations and putting them together to provide the program to our campuses. So it's very economical from that standpoint to our campuses and to the students. So.
Interesting. All right, that's fantastic. Well, that's great, Brent. I'm glad you jumped in there. So a very specific question: have you filled all 265 spots? And if so, how quickly were you able to do that? If you have not, what is your participant acceptance rate?
Is that question posed to me? Because I would say, if that's an interesting question, we let me just say, we had more funds available. So the program started out slowly. I mean, we probably initially, given our funding situation, we had 33 spots available in the first year, and we had, I think, and that was the case for the first couple of years. And so we didn't fill them all the first year. I mean, so we just rolled the money over year after year until we gained traction, until we gained greater understanding on our campuses. And so we're now in a position where we have to allocate spots to our campuses, which is new, because that wasn't the case initially. It was first come, first serve, and so that's why we've had to be a little bit more creative with trying to find ways to grow the program, and that's caused us to go to the campuses and ask them to be a funder in the program, because that way they know exactly how many spaces they have available for a particular student for a particular year. So we were rolling money over the first few years, but now that's why we're having to change that a little bit. So
that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, so I've got two very sort of specific questions, and if we have more questions, keep them coming in. We can also kind of reach back out to our speakers and our other sort of partners in the field to get to any other specific questions. But just while we have the opportunity, Kim Clark, I know that you're on, but I'm not sure if you are currently at your computer, and I saw your question come in. So if you are able to join us, I'd love to allow you to ask for your specific question, and you and I have had several conversations about it. But then, so just let us know if you get back. The next question is a specific one, and this could be for our speakers or for anybody on the call. Feel free to write in, and we can unmute you. If anybody has experience with partnering with post-secondary educational institutions in California, we have somebody on the line who has approached universities in the past and have not been able to get any kind of bite when trying to partner. So does anybody have any experience with California and could speak to that at all, or even the speakers that we have on the call?
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, this is Brent. I mean, we're part of a network of organizations throughout the country, and I'll be honest. I mean, I don't think California was there at that particular presentation, and nor have we had any contact with anybody in California. So.
All right, fair enough. Well, we'll see if we can get more information about that and share it out with the group if others have had similar experiences in the past. So now I would like to, Kim is on the line and she's ready. We're about to unmute you, Kim, but just to do a little stage setting here, because I've heard this in the past. If the speakers, we're about to hear about a question, a very specific question that they're dealing with there, but a lot of cases when I've visited grantees, they're interested in making these relationships and partnerships with post-secondary institutions, but there's a lot of sort of systems that either the university foundation or the universities have in place that just seem to be misaligned with the legislation that is part of running an AFI grant. So I'm going to let Kim sort of talk about her specific situation, but if anybody has kind of suggestions or advice about how to navigate those sorts of legal and political kind of situations, that would be great. So Kim, if you're available, I'm just going to unmute you real quick. All right, let's try and talk. Can you say something? Yeah, I had a feeling. It looks like you're called into your computer. So specifically, I'll just speak for Kim on her situation. In their case, they have been working to form a partnership with a college where a student has been awarded a scholarship, but the student scholarship is applied directly to the account and can't go into the IDA account owned by Kim's organization. And so it's a little challenging for them to figure out how to navigate that without sort of having the university themselves apply for the AFI grants. So if anybody's had experience with how to navigate that, maybe a joint account, making those student accounts joint accounts, whatever that might look like. And then the second one is, in some cases, students are awarded scholarships and they have to be spent immediately. And so it doesn't really meet the AFI requirement of a participant saving for 6 months. So these are just sort of like, they seem like roadblocks, but I'm sure that everybody has experienced, similar kind of situations in the past. Can any of our speakers or anybody else on the line kind of speak to these challenges?
So was the first question about student savings accounts themselves?
Yes, it was. Well, it was about the student account with the university, and so the deal is with Kim's situation in that particular partnership that they're trying to work with. They're trying to do this sort of match to the scholarship that the student is getting as part of sort of to offset the savings and the non-federal match and all of that. But the scholarship that the university awards requires that scholarship be directly deposited into the student account at the university, and so it can't go to the savings, the IDA savings account that the individual has, as you would with a normal IDA program. So they're trying to figure out how to, from an accounting standpoint, how they can come to some sort of agreement or mutual conclusion, I guess. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah, our match dollars go directly towards the university, the student account at the university. They don't go into the IDA account at the bank. But we do have that relationship and the tracking ability with the universities.
But this sounds like, Megan, is this a specific scholarship that an institution is trying to award a student?
Yep.
And
yeah, it's very specific, and that's why I tried to provide a little context. I'm sure that there's been similar sorts of roadblocks that other grantees have run into when trying to, engage in relationships with post-secondary institutions. And if you could just talk a little bit about how you go about even breaching these sort of seemingly impermeable walls and working with post-secondary institutions. Say, I know this is your policy, this is what we have to follow. How can we come to an agreement to change our policies together in such a way that everybody remains, in compliance and meeting their needs?
Well, it's some of those things. It really probably depends on an individual scholarship, because if it's a scholarship that a student earned that was from outside the institution, let's say, in Oregon, the Community Foundation awards a lot of private scholarships, and so how they're to be used is really donor specific, and it's pretty directed, and so in many cases the campuses have their hands tied a bit in terms of just being how they were directed by the donor. And so that's where that can be a little bit challenging. If it's institutional funds, that's just kind of a generic scholarship. And again, I think that's where, in working with our campuses, trying to be funders, if they're general funds just being used for scholarship, then they've got more flexibility. But if it's a specific scholarship, whether somebody gave it to the institution for a specific purpose, they're not going to, their flexibility is going to be pretty limited, or not be very, it can't be very flexible, because again, the donor is being directed by probably an individual donor per se, my guess.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is kind of in line with what I was thinking, but for those that have encountered these, and thank you so much for both of you for attempting to address that. I think there's a lot of very specific types of scenarios like this that AFI grantees run into when trying to build partnerships with post-secondary institutions. I think it's probably the same. I've spoken to a lot of grantees who run into similar, obviously different challenges when trying to build the right partnership with a financial institution or other partners in the community to try and build their AFI grants. And make it really successful. Sometimes it's a little more challenging, and it's just kind of a case-by-case basis. But thank you so much for talking about that. And in general, I think thanks so much for everybody for talking about kind of your experiences, for sharing your lessons learned, for providing these really great, insightful tips on how to build your relationships with post-secondary institutions and really be able to help your savers in your community get through all the way to asset purchase, and particularly around post-education. So this has been an incredibly robust webinar. We've had a ton of comments and questions come in. If your question or comment was not addressed, please, hold on. We will get to them all. We're going to read through all the transcripts and try and make sure that we address, everybody's questions and comments in the coming weeks. As I mentioned, we will be sharing out this webinar and transcripts. And if you have, anything follow-up that you'd like to ask, anything that comes to mind as you're going to bed tonight and thinking really critically about partnering with post-secondary institutions for your AFI grant, feel free to reach out to us at CFED as always. Please join us for, I'm just wrapping up here a little bit in our last 2 minutes. Please join us for our next webinar, which is going to be Monday, August 8th. As I mentioned earlier, it's on program development. So developing and delivering those strong AFI programs, as you all know, requires careful planning, consideration, and as you've heard on this call, sometimes it's a matter of kind of guess and check. Try this and see how it works. Do that careful tracking, think about the impact, and communicate that, build those strong partnerships, and then see what works. So we're going to talk more generally about program development on this next webinar, so we hope you all will join us. I just want to say, once again, thank you so much, Rodolfo and Brent and Maggie. It was really, really invaluable to have you all here. If you have any further questions, outside of this webinar for these speakers, you can always go to the idaresources.acf.hhs.gov. Check out our calendar for any upcoming webinars or any upcoming AFI-related sort of activities or events via the calendar there. You'll see it in the link. And then if you have specific help questions, always feel free to email info@idaresources.org or give them a call. Otherwise, thank you so much for your great participation today. It was wonderful to have you on the call, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your Monday and a good week. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.